Bye. So, hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Volkshochschule Bonn, the Adult Education Center Bonn, VHS, I wish you a very warm welcome here at Haus der Bildung. My name is Andreas Preu. At VHS, I'm in charge of the Department for Politics, Science and International Affairs. And originally, I'm not from the region, but when I moved here from my hometown in northern Bavaria, I learned something very soon, which you also might find interesting and important for your own ethnographic studies on the Rhineland. They have a saying: you do something for the first time, it just does not count. When you do it for the second time, you have a tradition, and when you do something for the third time, you have an ancient custom. So I'm very happy that our cooperation with the Right Livelihood College is today entering officially into the stage of an ancient custom. We at VHS every semester we have a focal topic just dealing with the SDGs. So in the semester it's just finishing, it was SDG number 15, Life on Land. It will be SDG 5, Gender Equality, in the next semester. So today's event and talk on alternative Nobel Prize talk fits very well into this series. So I'm very happy to have you here. Thank you for coming, and thank you also to the Foundation Sparkasse Stiftung für internationale Begegnung for financing this event. So that's from my point, and just now hand over to Eva Jokana, who will do another talk and tell you useful things on the Rhineland.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mr. Preu. Yeah, it is my pleasure. Good evening, everybody, of course. It is my pleasure to welcome you, and I figured out that this hall is crowded in relation to 5 minutes ago, so I'm very happy to see you all. And welcome you to this talk of tonight in this very, exciting place, the Adult Education Center. The talk of the Right Livelihood College will be about alternative development pathways in Africa, focusing on sustainable development and local livelihoods. And somehow this is, the end kind of a workshop that you were engaged in during the last 3 and very exciting days. And I know that you talked about these topics related to sustainable agriculture, to organic farming, to food security or insecurity, about different production patterns and the challenges smallholder farmers are facing in light of climate change and global changes related to economic insecurity and unequal terms of trade and I wanted to say a word. The maniac of growth and progress that we all face and suffer during these days, and probably, unfortunately, also in the future. For those who haven't attended the workshop of the Right Livelihood College, I want to introduce the main protagonists of this evening, which are the representatives of Right Livelihood Award and laureates from different institutes all over Africa. So my great pleasure is to introduce Dr. David Amudavi, who is the director of the Alternative Nobel Prize awarded Biovision of Africa Trust in Kenya. And he's working together with the Institute since long on livelihood improvement and technology transfer among smallholder farmers. I also want to welcome, and I haven't seen him yet, Mr. Jumanta Gakelebone. Hello. Why are you sitting in the back? Welcome. He's presenting the Alternative Nobel Prize awarded organization First People of the Kalahari in Botswana. And they are trying to, or they do, map traditional territories in order to show and visibilize detailed local knowledge about these territories. And I think this is all the more important as mainstream knowledge is somehow covering all and doesn't let local knowledge, very important knowledge, to improve agricultural systems and remain with them. Anyways. I also want to present Dr. Fidelis Allen. He's the coordinator. Where is he? Coordinator High of the Right Livelihood College in Port Harcourt in Nigeria, and who works closely together with the Alternative Nobel Prize laureate Nimo Bassi. You are looking together with the Institute Friends of the Earth International at the impact of oil extraction by multinational companies on social relations, peasant fishing and farming, women, politics, and conflict in the Niger Delta. And by the way, your colleague, Nimo Bassi, is also invited to our symposium that will be held in Bogota in November this year, and he already accepted our invitation, and we will be in this framework also talk about alternatives, environmental thinking and alternatives to development in a South-South perspective. So you did it somehow in a South-South perspective, but within Africa, and we want to open the debate and expand it and add other knowledges to it. And last but not least, I want to welcome Dr. Juliet Wanjiku Kamau. She's a research associate at Bonn University and the Right Livelihood campus in Bonn, a PhD alumni of the Right Livelihood campus, and works on ecological organic agriculture systems in Kenya. I want to thank to the Foundation for International Dialogue of the Savings Bank in Bonn, Sparkassenstiftung in Bonn, and of course to Haus der Bildung for again hosting us, and this is a custom already. And now I want to pass on to Joe Hill. He's also our esteemed colleague and a former senior researcher of the Center for Development Research, and you will moderate through the evening. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to the event. It's a real privilege to be here with the speakers, to have got to know them over the past few days and with the audience. The title of tonight's event is Sustainable Development versus Local Livelihoods, Alternative Nobel Prize Talk on Alternative Development Pathways in Africa. I just wanted to begin by framing the discussion of sustainable development. It's now 27 years since the Rio Conference, the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. An Agenda 21, a comprehensive plan of action, was created to be taken up globally, nationally and locally by UN organizations, governments and local other groups in every area in which humankind is impacting the environment. Last year in October, as you'll all be aware, the world's leading climatic scientists warned that there's only 12 years for global warming to be kept to a maximum of 1.5 degrees, beyond which half a degree will significantly worsen the risks of drought, flood, extreme heat and poverty for hundreds of millions of people. Other scientists dispute that we even have 12 years left because of negative feedback loops. For example, the Arctic's melting rapidly, permafrost is thawing, oceans are acidifying, and we're living in and we've caused planet Earth's 6th mass extinction event. Climate change or breakdown is caused by fossil fuel emissions, and humankind has emitted roughly half of its carbon emissions since the 1992 Rio summit. In my lifetime alone, 2/3 of all fossil fuel emissions have been emitted since 1751. And if anyone is here in the room is above the age of 60, in your lifetime, 80% of all global fossil fuel emissions have been emitted. Last week, Philip Alston, the UN Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights, said that the impacts of global heating are likely to undermine not only basic rights to water, food, life and housing for hundreds of millions of people, but also democracy and the rule of law. His report said that the world is increasingly at threat of climate apartheid, where the rich will pay to escape heat and hunger, and while the rest of the world will suffer. A few weeks ago, UK scientists released a report that predicts that both ends of Africa's weather extremes are going to become more severe. The wet extreme will get worse, and the dry spells during the growing season will become more severe. And that brings us to the second part of today's event, the second part of the title, Local Livelihoods. Here in Europe and the global north, perhaps we've only just woken up to the reality of climate change because our livelihoods are not directly related to the weather. School children have been protesting this year, angry that adults have not done enough, are not doing enough to combat climate change. So the crimes, actually we could call them crimes, committed by the oil industry that has allowed for the globalized production and supply of cheap oil is a topic Dr. Fidelis Allen from the University of Port Harcourt will discuss with us tonight. His work focuses on the deplorable conditions the local population of the Niger Delta have had to endure for decades. A global economic system that has increasingly and rapidly concentrated wealth in the hands of a few to the disadvantages of the masses is a topic that another of our guests, Jumanta from Botswana, understands only too well. His people, the first people of the Kalahari, were evicted from their ancestral land and forced to eke out a miserable life after their government opened up the Kalahari Reserve in the 80s and 90s, partly at least to develop a tourist industry. Imposed dispossession and destitution, unfortunately, continues to be the experience of indigenous and local people around the world. The rapacious global economic system spares no creature. In the agricultural sector, the aggressive promotion of synthetic fertilizers, chemical pesticides and accompanying seeds are major drivers of the mass insect extinction, threatening to collapse natural ecosystems around the globe. Agriculture needs to be transformed in a way that will most probably necessitate undoing 60 years of global developments in agriculture. On this topic, we have two speakers here tonight, Dr. David Amudavi and Dr. Juliet Kamau, and the two can perhaps help us understand more clearly the challenges ahead for African agriculture. So I took the liberty to give this introductory speech because the subtitle of tonight's event is Alternative Development Pathways for Africa. Humankind is right now at a crossroads. We obviously can't afford to continue as we've done in the past 3 decades, in the next 3 decades. If we do, the scientist's message is clear, we're pretty doomed. However, it's not all doom and gloom, and exciting things are happening. So without further ado, I'd like to begin the interviews, and I'd like to invite Dr. David Amudavi and Dr. Juliet Kamau up to the stage, please. Okay, Dr. David Amudavi, you're Director of the Biovision Africa Trust, Coordinator of the Biovision Farmer Communication Program, also the Ecological Organic Agriculture Initiative for Africa. Can you please tell us in a nutshell about the work of your organization? Particularly, can you elaborate on the alternative development pathway you envisage for African agriculture?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to come and talk to all of you. As you heard, my name is David Amudavi. I'm the Executive Director of Biovision Africa Trust, an organization formed in Nairobi by one of the renowned scientists, Dr. Hans Herring, the founder of Biovision Foundation, as well as Biovision Africa Trust. Our farmer communication program is unique of its kind in Africa because it puts together knowledge that can help farmers, not only in Kenya, but also within our East African region. And some of its pathways of how we reach farmers are increasingly being utilized by other organizations in Africa as well. We focus on putting together information and knowledge that has been either generated from research or from practice, and that can support families and rural communities in the area of human health, plant health, animal health, and environmental health. We believe in what we call total health, and total health is actually a prerequisite for the appropriate and more desired development that we'd wish to see. One of the major drivers for agriculture, especially smallholder agriculture, which is characteristic for many farmers in the continent, it's in the area of getting the knowledge that they need, one, to increase production, and also two, to have production that is more healthy and more friendly to the environment. And this is part of the work that we do, in a way linking research to farmers, ensuring that what comes from research is eventually put into application. Because if you look at what investments that go into research and how much of that gets into ultimate application, there is usually a disconnect. A lot is being pumped into research, some that is very valuable, especially for sustainable agriculture, but most of it ends up being somewhere, and perhaps in the circulation of publications and not really reaching where it should reach. So my organization plays that important role of ensuring that information and knowledge that has been generated by researchers, by scientists, and we do collaborate with quite a lot of them from the Consolidated Group on International Agricultural Research and from also our own national agricultural research systems. We look at what has worked and has the potential to be sustainably used by farmers. We package it through farmers' newsletters. We package that also through radio programs. We also provide that through a very rich online database. We call it Infinite. It's online. If you Google Biovision Africa Trust, you will see all this under our farmer communication program. And we also interact face-to-face with farmers in terms of training them, in terms of understanding what their interests are, and also in terms of us providing the supply side of information that is valuable to them. So we try to create a balance between demand, what the farmers would like to have, but also we try to calculate or to inculcate the latent demand, which is actually through the supply of information that we provide. And a very important initiative that my organization is coordinating on the continent, you've already alluded to it, I'm sure I'll have time to talk about it. That is the Ecological Organic Agriculture Initiative, which provides an alternative pathway to sustainable development as well as improved livelihoods. This is in the sense that we are looking at how do we enhance production, which is very important, and from an economic sense, we need to have production increase through the kind of technologies that are developed and also through the kind of innovations that are able to come up, either through research or through farmers. So that is important for us. But number two, and very importantly, we like to see how do we increase production, but at the same time being conscious of our environment and particularly soil health. A lot of farmers in the continent are actually getting less from increased use of inorganic inputs and particularly synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. And the dream of actually achieving the green revolution seems not to be realized. And this is in spite of the billions of dollars that are being put into research. And you can tell me where in Africa have we seen a green revolution, a true green revolution? And I would say you will not really get that. So ecological organic agriculture, which is based on agroecology, that is balancing what people do with the environment and the society in a very intentional way, is perhaps the most appropriate model that we can pursue for sustainable development.
Yep. Thank you. You call ecological organic agriculture genuine sustainable agriculture, and you've also spoken about how mainstream organizations do not support systems of ecological agriculture. So do you feel a bit let down, frankly speaking, by governments and the UN organizations in this respect? And moreover, what's the root cause of the lack of support from the mainstream organizations to the organic or ecological agriculture?
I don't feel disappointed. I think increasingly and globally, as you can see, everyone is concerned about the health of production. It's an important question. It's an important question that even the proponents of how to address issues of climate change are grappling with. Our own global organization that is concerned with agriculture, that's Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, is concerned about this. And that's why it has also come up with the agroecology scaling up initiative. So it's not really a frustration on my side. I see really the attention towards looking at alternative forms of agriculture that are really appropriate in the context of sustainable development. If you look at the 17 major goals of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, most of them actually require a different way of doing our agriculture and handling our food systems. And most of them actually look at how do we productively and more sustainably use our natural resource base. And the extractive and exploitative systems that we have at the moment cannot actually help us achieve very well the Sustainable Global Development Goals.
Right.
And agroecology, which is actually the foundation of most of the sustainable agricultural systems, in a way provides the answer. What is limited, and by so, especially the mainstream organizations, is the limited funding they put into research and the development of the technologies and applications that can come out of this. It is in my opinion, and also opinion that is informed by science, because agroecology is informed by science, and everyone wants to ask the question, do you have evidence to show that this works? But then how do you generate evidence from possibilities and opportunities if you don't invest in that research? So one, it's important for us to invest in the research. And two, it's also important for us to invest in the pathways through which we can actually put research findings into use. And mainstream organizations, of course, in cohort, with the powers that be that really dictate and control factors of production, will not really find it very easy to support agroecology-based interventions as for now. But I feel the thinking is there, the will is a little bit growing, and I think, in my view, I feel as we continue to show more evidence that it works, even with the limited research that is being put into agroecology-based research, this perhaps will also provide room and space to see that yes, there is potential if we can peg our agriculture on agroecology. Thank you.
Okay. One more question related to the African Union and its action plan for ecological organic agriculture. It aims to mainstream ecological organic agriculture into national production systems, policies and practices by 2025. So you presented on this in Bonn 3 years ago. What has been the progress in the last 3 years, and what are some of the stumbling blocks you're coming up against to mainstream?
The interest by the African Union is growing, but I must say it has also been a little bit frustrating in the sense that at that level, there hasn't been really strong political will to put into implementation the decision that was made to support basically organic agriculture. But I'm also glad to say that the Ecological Organic Agriculture Initiative has a continental steering committee, which is actually chaired by the head of Agriculture and Food Security of the Department of Rural Economy and Agriculture at the African Union Commission. So there is that sense of support to it, but they would actually much more. And recently, we actually had a discussion on how we can look at the way the African heads of states' decisions on various sectors, including agriculture as well as organic farming, can actually be fully put into application. And one area that we are looking at, and I'm glad that the African Union Commission is looking into this, is having indicators that can be included in the biannual review reporting to show what progress different countries are making in the commitments that the heads of states have made in various sectors of our economies. So I think the interest is growing, but there is limited support into that sector as for now.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Juliet, you've carried out studies and published in peer-reviewed journals on organic agriculture. Can you please tell us, in your view, how ecological organic agriculture compares with conventional agriculture in Kenya, in Africa?
Thank you. I can't speak for Africa, but I can speak for Kenya. A bit, maybe I can make a generalization, but I would say that organic agriculture in Kenya is not organic agriculture in Germany. It's a bit different. In terms of, because if you have on one spectrum the use of fertilizer, or inorganic, synthetic fertilizer, mineral fertilizer, and the control of pests and diseases and weeds, in one extreme spectrum, you could have what we call organic by default. I'd say quote unquote organic by default. What people say, in Africa people are growing organic anyway, just because they're not adding anything. So it's a low input, low output system. So that is not organic. I wouldn't say it's organic. We have traditional agriculture where there's no use of of inorganic fertilizer or much use of agro-pesticides and synthetic ones. It's all right, but it's also, in the traditional days, it was also extrapolated. I would say now is a bit, it could be, because African soils are overmined now, and that's why we have huge yield gaps. So organic agriculture, whether can be certified or non-certified, and if it's certified, it could be that part is certified, like the product that comes to Europe, or the one, it could be certified locally, especially the produce that is grown by participatory guarantee system farmers. So that is what I would call organic. Conventional agriculture, on the other hand, is in Europe is not the same as conventional agriculture in Africa as well, because there is underuse of inputs for every 1 hectare of land of recommendation of fertilizer or even pesticide. There is a huge gap. There's probably, I would say, maybe less than 10% of what is required, and that has been shown by research. So our conventional agriculture and our organic agriculture, what I find in my studies, when you go and look at the soil, for example, the residue, it depends, but there could not be much difference because there's not much in terms of input use. And what I found is that what is differentiating organic and conventional agriculture is the conventional farmers use synthetic inputs, the non-organic farmers don't, but the certified ones are trying, and they're going slightly beyond to apply practices that are recommended by, in this case specifically, organic agriculture in terms of mulching, rotation, and green manure. So I would say that's the difference. It's a bit complicated, it's not so clear-cut as we would say in Europe.
Okay, thank you. Your 2018 paper concludes that poorer, younger, and less well-connected farmers are less involved in organic agriculture, and conversely, older household heads, families with better connections, and legal ownership of land are more engaged in organic agriculture. This finding kind of resonates with what I've seen in Eastern India during my research. What does this tell us about the way NGOs and private companies are working? Does it suggest that more efforts are needed to reach out to poorer farmers? Or do you feel that NGOs are doing their best given the circumstances? Could you elaborate on that a bit, please?
Thank you. I'll leave the question of NGOs doing enough to David because he's a bit more informed and he's working on the ground, but could they target the poor farmers more? Yes, they should, I think. Any intervention, what we see is that when an intervention comes, it's mostly the slightly well-off, the ones who have a bit more resources in terms of land tenure security, a bit of money even to buy the intervention or to access the intervention, or they belong to some sort of a strong social system that can enable them to access a given innovation or intervention. So for these people who are not well connected and don't have the resources, it would be very, very beneficial to strengthen this so that they can be able to access any kind of resource. And maybe, David, you can answer on the NGO.
Yeah, I think very briefly I would say NGOs working with the communities that are not very well connected, it's just very important because they help to build their social capital. And we know the power that is actually within communities when they come together, or individuals when they come together. In terms of trying out new technologies and so on, it becomes easier when you are dealing with people in groups, because there is that element of sharing risk. If you know that you are doing what I'm also doing, you feel more secure and a bit assured than if you are just trying something by yourselves. And for those who are less connected, and especially if they are resource poor, as we would really imagine, they are usually quite risk averse. And working with such communities, and especially in groups, it becomes much easier to go over some of the hiccups, some of the challenges that such groups of people in the society face when it comes to picking up new technologies or innovations. So yes, working with such groups, and especially getting them to work together in terms of dealing with risks in technology adoption, and also in terms of organizing them for accessing certain input that they may not be able to do that individually, is really very important. And as well, that helps them to tap more into other services that might be provided in the community that require farmers or groups of communities to be organized.
I wanted to say, and capacity, people who are slightly more educated, because I found that capacity is lacking in terms of technical know-how, as well as the knowledge, the theoretical knowledge. So if you build a bit of capacity, and in poorer households, not all of them are poor, but in poorer households, this could be missing. And even if you don't take them to school for formal learning, and you build simple bookkeeping skills and a few skills like this could help as well, for them to access loans and things like this. Yeah.
I have two more questions before we move on to the next. We have to move on? Yeah. Okay. Just one more question then, briefly. Regarding climate change, what are the impacts you're seeing in Kenya, and how are organic farmers coping compared with conventional farmers? What are you seeing in the field?
Yeah, climate change is real. In Kenya, for example, where I come from, I just want to say very briefly, we used to have two major rainfall seasons. That used to be from March to around June, and then from October to December. And this year, farmers were expecting rains to come in April. And I can tell you, well, in March, the rains didn't come. In April, rains didn't come. And we are already predicting a serious shortfall in the grain reserves that we may be expecting from this year's rainfall. And this is actually quite across most of the country. And there's been that really big shift. One, in the predictability of the rainfall, and then secondly, when it usually falls. And this is actually attributed to the effects of climate change. Now, the question of how organic farmers and the other type of farmers are responding to this is a very good one. I wish I would actually do a very quick study just to look at, for instance, this year, when the rains really delayed by 2 months. How have the two types of farmers responded to this? And I would be very happy to respond to that question in particular, if we are able to find out how they have done this way. But I want to say this, that a lot of farmers that are practicing organic practices, and this has actually been shown by some few very cases that we have, they'll always have something actually on the farm as opposed to the farmers that produce conventionally. And this is because of some of the organic systems that they're using. They're more resilient to changes that we see being brought about by effects of climate change as opposed to conventional systems. So my gut feeling, and which is actually already shown by some of the practices that farmers do, would be organic farmers who usually also have one important component about them, and that is the component of diversity. Having a range of enterprises on their farms, which is very good in terms of smoothing their consumption over a period of time when there are shocks and fluctuations. Organic farmers do not just rely on one commodity alone. They really have a diverse range of food products. So in the face of food shortages, they have a better smoothing consumption patterns as opposed to conventional farmers who might be relying on one or two major types of foodstuffs.
Super, thank you. That's good to hear. Next, I'd like to welcome Jumanta up to the stage. Yeah, I'd like to welcome Jumanta Gakelebone, a bushman, activist and spokesman for the First People of the Kalahari, Botswana, an organization that received the Right Livelihood Prize in 2005. Welcome, it's a real pleasure to have you here. Can you begin by telling us the history of your people's struggle? Who are the Bushmen of the Kalahari? Why were you forced from your ancestral land? And what has your organization, the First People of the Kalahari, been able to achieve for your people?
Thank you. I think first,
Yes, it's good.
thank to be here, and I would like to greet with my native language. The First People of Kalahari is an organization which was formed in 1993. It was formed to fight for the rights of indigenous people, especially called the San. Some anthropologists call us San, some call us Bushmen, some call us Basara. We've got many names. Whatever you call us is not a problem. But we fight at this because we have thought that the indigenous people in Botswana have been living with the environment and been taking care of the environment, and they've been good onto everything which they were doing. But government, because of the name of development, were kicked out from their indigenous land, and that land has been called game reserves, some called farming areas, and some was also to pave the way for the mining companies to come and mine diamonds. So our aim was to try to show the outside world that indigenous people also do care about environment. They do also care about their life. They also have got the rights of land. In 1997, the government of Botswana pushed my own people from the area called Central Kalahari Game Reserve. That's why I started being involved on the rights of indigenous people. And the issue was because of development. You are living a primitive way of life. So we have to take you out from where you are and to put you into the mainstream of the global mainstream. And the issue was that, why? But there was no answer. The answer is that we need to be developed. So that's where we started. We had a long case which started in 2002 up to 2006, back in court, and then in 2006. Luckily, the rule was in our favor, and then we have to go back home. This is what we face after the name of development when we moved to development called areas. We see our people dying of different kind of diseases, which were very new to us. We see people dying of HIV/AIDS. We see people dying of tuberculosis. We see people getting sick to different kind of diseases like high blood and other things which I never known. When I grew up, when I was still young, I used to know that only old people die because of age. And we are not even allowed to be told that these people have died. We only have to know that he has disappeared. Nobody knows where he has gone. That was what we have to be told, because we not have to know that somebody is dead. So now we've got the young people dying not at the age we were expecting. And we have got the people living another way of life was depending only on government handouts. Where they were relocated, they now live on government handouts. So each and every month, the government will be bringing food to support all these families. But by the time when they were staying in their areas, everyone had to know how to survive. We live on hunting and gathering. We're not plowing, we're not rearing livestock, but we are living healthier. Let me make an example. A study was made last year by the government on how children, and he found that where they were located, young children were on malnutrition. And the study which was done in CKGR on the Central Kalahari, for those who have gone back, it was 0. So to me, that shows me that those people have been eating healthier food than to where they are right now. And only because of the name of development, you take healthier people, you put them in the middle of the kind of those diseases, you put them in that situation, and we say, that's development. I always ask myself a question, what is development? When are those who are dying because of the disease staying out where there's a nice clinic, there's school, there's running water, but people are dying? Do we call that development? That's what always I ask myself. And one thing is that, what is wrong with us? Or what is happening? We can hear the outside world. Today, somebody has been just talking about climate change. That's something which affected us. When I grew up, I used to know that it will rain starting from September up to April. Now we're not getting rain. We're not getting food. Because we really lived on the forest, which now is not giving us food. And how much will government take care of us? For how long?
Thank you. Yesterday, when you gave a presentation in ZEF, you talked about how hunting and gathering practiced by your people is a form of science and that it's fair and healthy. So can you tell us a little bit? I'm sure the audience are quite interested to know about some of the hunting and gathering that you're involved in. And perhaps you can also mention with a few concrete examples how exactly the changing climate is impacting on the flora and fauna in your home environment.
I'm not sure if all of us are familiar with, there is a movie called God Must Be Crazy. That movie, if some of you have looked at it, it really tells what we are. That man was asking himself, what is getting wrong with him? Why is these things happening to him? And then people say that he doesn't want to be developed. So the hunting or gathering, as he said, what we always say, I say to people is that we have been living science, which was very nice and harmonious to the environment. The bow and arrow hunting poison we use was from the tree, and we use it to kill animals, and we still eat those animals, but it didn't affect us. We even use it for medicine. I had my brother talking about rain. Before, we used to even communicate with rain. With us, we knew when it's going to be raining by looking at the stars. They will tell us now the season of rain is coming and when it's going to end by reading the stars. And if it doesn't rain, we used to know that there's something wrong, and we'll get the herbs, bend them, and do the dancing. For doing the dancing, we know that tomorrow is going to rain. So that's how we were coping with the environment and communicating with it. But I'm really now really very sorry, and I feel pitiful when I see my people cannot do all those things. They are sitting to waste development, young people drinking every day, seeing people dying, not seeing that smile they used to do. When we are happy ourselves, and when we call ourselves that now, today we have developed, is by seeing us happy and a smile on our face, by dancing for what we have gathered, for what we have collected, for what we have hunted, is now we are developed. And we dance, and we thank for what we have gained. But now, we no longer see those things. And we see another kind of way of life which we don't understand.
Okay, so finally, could you elaborate a bit on your ideas of development? Yeah, you've mentioned that development, when it's forced on people, it's a destructive form of development. In light of what you've seen, and in light of the changed conditions, how do you envisage a positive future development for your people?
I think the development, to me, to my understanding, the development means changing of mindset of an individual. So it also should be a choice. I have to choose myself. People not have to be forced to develop, like what is happening with us. We are forced to be Americans, we are forced to be Germans. We are not Germans, and will never be. We are indigenous people, are sand people. We have got our way of life. Anything which we want to develop is what we have and what we have the knowledge with. So if you come to us and ask us, what is this, we'll tell you. If it's anything to do with development, then we develop what we have and what we have the knowledge with. So then we will know where we have gone wrong and what is that we have to do to repair what we have destroyed. Now, all of us, we are asking ourselves as the world and say that climate change is hitting us, and everyone is asking himself, where to face? Where have we done wrong? So to me, I think it's time for now for us to pause and look onto these things and see where we have gone wrong and repair things before it gets late.
Thank you very much, Jumanta.
Pleasure.
You can either stay here or you can take a seat at the front. Either way, I don't mind. Yeah, and I'd like to finally welcome Dr. Fidelis Allen to the stage, please. Thank you. Hi, Fidelis. You're Associate Professor of Politics of Development, Acting Director of the Center for Conflict and Gender Studies, and Coordinator of the Right Livelihood College campus at your university, the University of Port Harcourt. Your research and action focuses on the impact of oil extraction by multinational companies in the Niger Delta. For those of us who are unaware about the scale of the ecological and human horrors of oil production in the Niger Delta, can you please give us an overview of that? And perhaps you can include a mention of the events that led to the execution of Ken Saro-Wiwa, who was also a Right Livelihood Award recipient, and other movement for the survival of the Ogoni people environmental activists, after what you describe as a secret stage-managed trial in one of your papers. Please.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. The Niger Delta was not so much in the global public view before 1990. In 1995, Ken Saro-Wiwa was killed by the military government. Himself and 8 others. Apparently, Ken Saro-Wiwa had founded the movement for the survival of Ogoni people. And until he died, he was president of that movement. And this is actually a platform for the Ogoni people for struggles against oil-related environmental problems, struggle for development. Now, when you mention the Niger Delta today, it is almost as good as talking about the oil. Oil exploration in Nigeria started in 1903 by a German bitumen company. But the First and Second World War created some problems. So it was actually in 1956 that oil was discovered. And in 1958, Nigeria recorded its first shipment of product. And since then, Nigeria has become a full-fledged oil exporting nation. Now, between 1958 and now, Nigeria has made so much money, billions of dollars. Now, before the discovery of oil, Nigeria was known for agriculture, which was quite sustaining for local people. The oil industry today has given Nigeria so much money, but it has also been a problem for the environment and for local people. In my years of analysis of the oil industry, politics, and conflict, it's clear that oil has different qualities. So oil is an economic problem, oil is an environmental problem, oil is a political problem. And oil is closely associated with carbon imprint, carbon emissions, which is to say that the climate problem we have today is partly linked to the contributions that the oil industry has made over the years. Now, the oil industry in Nigeria over the years has influenced the character of politics in that nation. And the truth is, corporations have driven the development of the oil sector in Nigeria. At the point of entry, politicians in Nigeria did not quite have the skill and the capacity to negotiate with the oil majors in ways that would protect the environment and serve the corporate interests of Nigeria. It was not also clear how oil was, what oil would mean for the environment, because not much was known. And the impression was that oil has been discovered, and this is going to be a national commodity of importance. Now today, national security questions in Nigeria is about uninterrupted production of the oil. So that is the extent to which the oil industry has related to the Nigerian state, to politics. But we must look critically into, consider critically the role of oil in the overall well-being of communities where oil is mined. And let me just say that the Niger Delta has a particular meaning. In recent times, it has a political meaning. It used to have a geographical meaning, but now it has a political meaning. And what that means is that all the states in Nigeria has 36 states. All the states in Nigeria that have oil are part of the Niger Delta. We have 9 of them, and only recently we have a 10th state, but oil production has not started in that state. So when production starts in that state, we would have had 10 states that can be referred to as the Niger Delta. So that's the political meaning of the Niger Delta. That also, for me, speaks volumes about the political character of oil in Nigeria. So over the years, we have seen the influence and the power of oil corporations in terms of influence on policy decision-making processes. It will surprise some of you to know that oil started way back, oil production started way back in 1958. But between 1958 and 1980, there was no policy to check the environmental implications of the oil industry. There was no national environmental policy to regulate the activities of the oil corporations. It was not until the late 1980s that somehow it was becoming clear that operators of the Nigerian state could not continue to pay a blind eye to environmental problems emanating from the mining of oil. And even now, we don't have a comprehensive policy to check environmental pollution. There are two key aspects of the oil industry in Nigeria that we must note. The regular pollution from spills. And now it has become worse because we have an illegal economy that is contributing, making pollution worse in the Niger Delta.
Fidelis, I just wanted to ask you one other question, and then we'll invite everybody onto the stage for some collective questions, because we have about 15 minutes left for the session. I'm particularly interested to know your hopes for the future. I just want to let the audience know that Fidelis has published extensively on the problems of the oil industry in the Niger Delta, so you can find his academic articles online and you can read a lot of the details there. I'm interested to know your hopes for the future, because currently there are talks about decarbonizing the global economy. A lot of it's talk at the moment, but it's something that arguably we need to do. So do you think this could lead to an end to the curse of oil for the people of the Niger Delta?
Definitely, oil will naturally become insignificant, but that may not happen soon in the case of Nigeria. The reason is the state has been captured. The Nigerian state has been captured by the oil corporations. Nigeria depends on the oil for more than 80% of its national income, and depends on the oil industry for most of its foreign exchange earnings. And so you find a state that is so completely afflicted by what the literature calls Dutch disease, but beyond that is the wearing of the mentality of the political class that now believes that without the oil, Nigeria will be gone. And there's no adequate preparation for alternative means of income for the government. And so as at present, the government is even intensifying efforts for more exploration of oil. I mean, in the Lake Chad Basin, yeah, a lot of work has been done to see if oil can be discovered. So that tells you where we're going. So I don't see, and this is not about Nigeria alone. There are more than 20 oil-producing countries in Africa with proven huge oil reserve. And I think they are just praying every day that they might be able to assess the oil and have more growth, because the idea is more money.
Yep.
You see, you need more money in order to be able to line up your pockets. Line up your pockets. Wait. So you see, the oil industry is really the bane.
Yeah.
It's really the bane of Nigeria and most of the countries that have oil in their soil.
Okay, thank you, Fidelis. I'm going to have to cut you short there. Could I invite the other panelists back up to the stage, please? And then we'll have a round of questions. Yes, please. Would anyone like to ask any of the panelists a question? Yes, please.
I had a question. You can share. I had a question to probably David and your Juliet.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously, your approaches are extremely beneficial to smallholder farmers. I think that's can be seen very clearly. Will you also see them for, say, larger holder farmers or even companies? These approaches in organic agriculture, or are you completely focusing on smallholder farmers?
Do you want to collect or answer one by one?
We can collect if anybody else will offer a question. Yep, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I would say it is possible to apply organic principles and practices to scale, to large scale as well. And I think that there are examples, even around the continent, where we've seen large production of organic produce on a large scale. It is possible, and I think it also requires just investment, as it is in conventional agriculture. And I don't see why that shouldn't be the case. Just as an example, if we were to produce fertilizer, biofertilizers, you need to put investment into that. And I don't think there is anything impossible if we go that way in producing for large-scale farming. So it is possible, in my view, and it just means we have also to have the requisite kind of investment to support large-scale organic farming.
Would anybody else like to ask a question? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask our friend from Botswana. The big problem I see is the resettlement. Yeah. So my question, I was just wondering, what if the government could have brought maybe schools or hospitals to your areas without this process of resettling? Would that have changed at least part of this whole thing or not?
I think my answer straight is going to be yes, it could have. Because if those people were staying in that environment, they are familiar with the environment. So now the dependency syndrome could have not been much higher as it is today. Because they could be feeding themselves as they used to do. They know that environment, they know how to go hunting, they know how to go gathering. I will make an example with myself because the school I went for, it was inside the game reserve where we were staying before we relocated. So that has not changed anything for me. I still have got that knowledge. After school, I know what to do. Without work, I know what to do. So my survival skill still remains as it was. So I think it was going to be better.
I think I don't need that. I have a question to Fidelis and Jumanta. I'm really impressed by in how you frame the problems and in how you organize activism around these big challenges that are not that much localized, but they are really shared by a lot of people, regions, countries in the world. And I would like to know in how you engage in a kind of South-South interaction in order to support each other. Is there anything that supports you, or what would be the right pathway in getting these activisms interlinked in order to improve, of course, the fight against these extractive industries, against this domination of certain knowledges, development models, and so on.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier, now an issue and the language now today is climate change. And then is who has done what and where are we going and what is that we have to do. I know a lot of people have been talking about this worldwide, and then we need to know each other and to learn from each other and see how best we can utilize things. We are connected with other different, many indigenous people across the world. Sometimes we met on the permanent forum, indigenous people on permanent forum, and we discussed this issue, and I know now it's an issue which has been discussed at the UN level. So I'm surely assured that something's going to happen and we are doing something in these issues.
Yeah, we're aware that climate change is not a local problem. Most environmental problems are not local. So if you look at corporations, the multinational corporations in Nigeria, for example, ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil is not about to reduce its carbon emissions. It's not about to do so. I think what the company is planning is even to increase by 25% its carbon footprints by 2030. Now, when the issue of climate change emerged, the big corporations, big oil, was fundamentally resistant. But over time, we have seen how many of them are living with the rhetorics of accepting the science of climate change. And some of them now want to be called energy companies because over time they are trying to present themselves as energy companies and not as much oil companies. So, but even so, the willingness, there's no demonstration as yet of the willingness to slow down or even to reflect deeply on the need to transit away from the oil industry. Now, in Nigeria, many of the joint venture operators are divesting their onshore investments. And this is deliberate because there has been so much conflict in onshore oil business in the Niger Delta. So the idea is let's go offshore enough and divest onshore, and that is happening. So you have the local entrepreneurs are taking over these onshore investments. Now, but offshore exploration is even more deadly, because you're talking about aquatic life, and if you're in the Niger Delta, among the riverine people that live on the coastal lines, you'll find that all that they have is the water. All that they have is the fish. Now, when Ken Saro-Wiwa was killed, the Niger Delta was not known until 1995. So the killing of Ken Saro-Wiwa launched the Ogoni people into the global arena. And that, from then, the global community, the global civil society, started finding ways The Niger Delta is about 30 million people, and you have the Jaws as the fourth largest ethnic group in Nigeria, an ethnic minority. The Ogoni people are about 600,000 people, and then you have other minorities. So for the Jaws, shortly after the killing of Ken Saro-Wiwa and 8 others, the youths in the Jaw ethnic minority started organizing, and they declared what we normally call the Kayama Declaration. Kayama Declaration is about demands on the oil companies to stop operating, demands on the oil companies to stop polluting the environment, and demands on the government for benefits from the. So over time, various groups in the Niger Delta have had relationships with the outside world, from groups from towards something happened in 2009. Before 2009, when the struggle and violent nature of the destruction 2.8 for the Nigerian try to find a way
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I think we'll end the session right now because I don't want to take more of your time. We're scheduled only until 7:15. It's a bit of a shame because I personally had quite a few more questions that I wanted to put to you tonight, but cramming interviews with 4 persons such as yourselves into such a short session was always going to be a challenge. So I want to thank you all again, Jumanta, Fidelis, David, and Juliet, for coming here. Perhaps we can give them a round of applause. And we wish you all the best in your onward travels and your work, and thank you for coming. Thank you very much. Thank you.